a folded speech, a misfired round, a table leg 3 inches out of place. 10 times, the fate of nations came down to margins that defy belief. We're counting down the assassination attempts where seconds and inches decided whether leaders lived or empires fell. From ambushed monarchs to Cold War targets, each entry raises the stakes. It begins in Victorian London, with a queen who should never have survived. In the 10th place, Queen Victoria's life hung on a thread, not once, but twice, as pistol shots cracked through the London air within yards of the monarch. In 1840, Edward Oxford fired 2 rounds at her open carriage on Constitution Hill, both missed by inches, and one lodged in the woodwork as crowds screamed. 40 years later, Roderick MacLean fired a revolver. The shot struck the side of her coach at Windsor and was stopped only by a metal panel. These Victorian near misses exposed a monarchy vulnerable in broad daylight, forcing the British state to overhaul royal security. Carriage routes were rerouted, police escorts became standard, and the age of the untouchable monarch began. Had a single bullet flown true, Britain could have faced a constitutional crisis decades before its time, a dynasty nearly ended by the twitch of a finger. Number 9. A single bullet nearly rewrote the fate of American politics in Milwaukee, October 1912. Theodore Roosevelt, former president and third-party candidate, stepped from his hotel into a crowd, unaware that John Schrank waited with a .38 caliber revolver. The shot struck Roosevelt square in the chest, but a folded 50-page campaign speech and a steel eyeglass case slowed the bullet, stopping it just 2 centimeters from his heart. Bleeding beneath his overcoat, Roosevelt refused immediate medical care and delivered a 90-minute speech with blood soaking through his shirt. Only after collapsing backstage did surgeons extract the bullet, which would remain lodged near his ribs for life. Had the paper-thin barrier failed, Roosevelt's death could have unified the fractured Republican Party, altering the 1912 election and the trajectory of the progressive movement. If not for a manuscript and a spectacle case, the bull moose might have been silenced forever. 8th place, 2 would-be assassins came within seconds and inches of plunging post-Watergate America into chaos. On September 5, 1975, Lynette "Squeaky" Fromm stepped from a Sacramento crowd, leveled a Colt .45 at Gerald Ford's chest, and pulled the trigger, only for the safety to jam, buying agents just enough time to wrestle her to the ground. 17 days later, in San Francisco, Sarah Jane Moore fired a .38 caliber revolver at Ford from 30 feet away. Her bullet missed the president by a hair, ricocheting off a wall as a bystander deflected her aim. Both attackers were subdued in moments, but the shockwaves forced the Secret Service to overhaul its protocols, adding bulletproof coats, metal detectors, and rapid tackle drills, turning presidential security into a science of split-second survival. Had either gun worked as intended, the United States might have faced a second assassination in a decade and a new spiral of national instability. Number 7. A wrong turn on the streets of Sarajevo set the world on fire. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand's motorcade survived a failed bomb attack in the morning. The device bounced off his car and exploded beneath the next vehicle, leaving the Archduke shaken but alive. Hours later, a fateful route error brought his open vehicle to a halt beside Gavrilo Princip, who stood outside a delicatessen with a pistol in hand. As the chauffeur tried to reverse, Princip stepped forward and fired 2 close-range shots. One struck the Archduke, the other struck his wife. Within minutes, both were dead. That split-second pause triggered the July crisis, unleashing alliances and armies across Europe. Had the driver not stopped, the powder keg of empires might never have ignited, and the 20th century could have taken a very different shape. Number 6. A rain of bullets cut through the late summer air outside Paris on August 22, 1962. Charles de Gaulle's unarmored Citroën DS sedan became the target of a machine gun ambush orchestrated by the OAS, a paramilitary group desperate to halt Algerian independence. As the convoy sped through Petit Clamart, assassins unleashed 140 rounds, shattering the rear window and riddling the car's panels. De Gaulle's driver, Francois Buissonny, swerved and accelerated through the hail of gunfire, somehow keeping the president and his wife unscathed. French Sûreté logs and the Presidential Guard's after-action report detail how mere seconds and a steady hand preserved the Fifth Republic. Had the shots found their mark, France might have plunged into chaos, its future torn between colonial fury and Cold War uncertainty. A single swerve kept a nation's destiny intact. Number 5. A pistol's report shattered the peace of St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981. Mehmet Ali Akka fired 2 shots at Pope John Paul II from just a few meters away. One bullet tore through the pontiff's abdomen, another grazed his hand. Vatican security logs marked the chaos, crowds scattering, Swiss guards closing in. A bloodied pope rushed to the Gemelli hospital. The clock ticked. Within 5 minutes, surgeons began a 77-minute operation, racing to repair massive internal injuries. The bullet missed the aorta by millimeters. Achka's motives remain debated, his links to foreign intelligence disputed in both Italian police files and Achka's own shifting testimony. 2 years later, the Pope forgave his would-be killer in a prison cell. Survival transformed John Paul II into a symbol of defiance, fueling Poland's solidarity movement and shaking the foundations of the communist bloc. Had the bullet struck true, the Cold War's spiritual front might have collapsed in silence. Number 4. Fidel Castro's survival in the 1960s and the 1970s reads like a dark comedy of Cold War espionage, except every punchline was a brush with global catastrophe. Exploding cigars, toxin-laced wetsuits, and mafia-delivered poison pills were not movie props, but documented plots straight from declassified CIA files and Cuban Interior Ministry reports. At least 60 attempts made it past the drawing board, from booby-trapped seashells to a weather-thwarted boat loaded with explosives that sank within sight of Castro's yacht, sparing him by seconds. Each plan, more bizarre than the last, exposed just how desperate Washington was to erase Havana's revolutionary leader. Had even one of these schemes succeeded, the Caribbean map could have been redrawn overnight. Cuba could have flipped into a client state of the United States, the missile crisis could have been averted or accelerated, and the superpower standoff could have tilted on a single failed trigger. One missed detonation kept the world from a nuclear fever dream. Coming to the top 3, one shot in Ford's Theater on April 14, 1865, shattered the fragile hopes of a nation just days after Lee's surrender. John Wilkes Booth crept into Lincoln's private box and from less than 6 inches away fired his .44 caliber Derringer behind the president's left ear. The bullet tore through Lincoln's brain, leaving him unconscious and dying as chaos erupted below. He lingered until dawn, but by morning the United States had lost its guiding hand for peace. The autopsy confirmed the path of destruction, point blank, no chance for recovery. With Lincoln gone, the presidency passed to Andrew Johnson, whose leniency clashed with radical Republicans in Congress. Military reconstruction, acts swept through the South, imposing harsh federal rule and deepening resentment that would echo for generations. Ford's theater trial transcripts and War Department records trace how one assassin's aim replaced reconciliation with retribution. Had Lincoln survived, the wounds of Civil War might have healed differently, but one bullet recast the fate of post-war America forever. Number 2. A ricocheted bullet came within a heartbeat of rewriting the Cold War. On March 30th, 1981, John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 shots outside the Washington Hilton. 1.22 caliber round struck Ronald Reagan's chest, deflected off the limousine, and tore into his left lung, stopping just an inch from his heart. Secret Service agents hustled the wounded president into a waiting car, racing him to the hospital in 12 minutes. Inside the trauma bay, surgeons cracked his chest and found the bullet had nicked a rib and missed a major artery by millimeters. White House Press Secretary James Brady was not so lucky. He was left permanently disabled, and his name later became attached to the 1993 Brady gun control law. The medical team's speed and that single inch of tissue preserved Reagan's life. Had the bullet shifted slightly, America's economic and diplomatic course might have veered overnight, with the world's most powerful office thrown into crisis. One errant ricochet kept the Cold War from spinning in a darker direction. And finally, in first place, a briefcase, a table leg, and 3 inches that kept the world on its darkest path. On July 20th, 1944, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg slipped a plastic-cased bomb beneath the heavy oak table in Hitler's Wolf's Lair. The device was primed to obliterate everyone in the room, including the dictator himself, but fate intervened when an officer, unaware, nudged the briefcase behind a solid table leg just minutes before detonation. When the blast ripped through the chamber, the dense wood deflected the force away from Hitler, sparing him with only minor wounds, while 4 others died instantly. In the chaos, the Nazi regime unleashed a wave of terror, with over 7,000 arrests, nearly 5,000 executions, and the collapse of the last organized resistance inside Germany. The war dragged on for 10 more brutal months, costing millions of lives and sealing the fate of Eastern Europe under Soviet control. The difference between annihilation and survival was measured in the thickness of a table leg, a margin so narrow that history itself seemed to teeter on its edge. Had the briefcase stayed in place, the war, the Holocaust, and the map of the post-war world might have ended in a single, shattering instant. Across all 10 attempts, one chilling pattern emerges. History's fate often hangs by a thread, dictated by luck, hesitation, or a single misstep. Power is not destined, it is perilously fragile. Even now, the world's course can shift on a heartbeat. For every survivor, a different world nearly awaited.